stuff, then can they be untaught? It's just so much. It's just too easy to throw people away, man. It's just
Yeah.
like your kids. It's easier to spank them than it is to teach them.
Yeah.
It's easier to control somebody than it is to parent somebody. Parenting is a job. It's a 24-hour day job that you're constantly teaching. But
Right.
it's so much easier for me to control you. I want you to be quiet, and I want you to do something now, so I'm going to hit you, or I'm going to spank you, or it's just way too easy. And at the end of the day, do you not do it again because you truly understand why it's wrong, or I just don't want another spanking? I just don't want to get hit. I just don't want to get hurt.
Right. It's like it's a baby in the bathwater kind of issue. Like,
Yeah.
I use my dog. That's like my kid, right? So, when he's acting up, I just say like, oh, I'm frustrated by it, but that's a dog being a dog. The cool thing about dogs is they doing one thing 1 minute, they acting up, but then they're nice the next minute, and you
Yeah.
can let it go because you figure, oh, it's not a character thing. But with people though,
Yeah.
I don't know, where do we draw that line?
I don't know. That's a good thing. Like, I think the same way about children. One of the dopest things that I've ever been told about being a parent is that one of my advisors, shout out Wade Boykins, Dr. Boykins, good parents always know their kids will be kids. Kids will do things in a child like mine. I think that we all have this assumption that just because you're older, you know better.
Yeah.
Like with age comes wisdom, and that's not always necessarily true. You know, if I had an example I give all the time, if I had a bucket of junk and told you to pick out a widget, you would look at me and say, what is a widget? You can't find something if you don't know what it is. And it's never been shown to you. How can you do something, or how can you react and respond in a way? How can you behave in a way? Like, how can you do something if you've never been shown how to do it? But we just assume, like, when people, I hear people say it all the time. When we see people get in trouble, we say, it's a grown man.
Yeah.
That's a grown
I
woman.
heard
You're
that.
supposed to know better. You should know better. Well, how is that? All we have are the tools that our parents gave us. All we have are the tools that our parents and our community and our environments give us. And while that seems like, I don't mean, I want to be clear though. I didn't mean to cut you off. I want to be clear though. I don't want to excuse inappropriate behavior.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, inappropriate behavior is inappropriate behavior, no matter, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, there are people in this world, like I said, there are people who are emotionally handicapped. And that's what it is. And at the end of the day, can we expect people to have a level of consciousness, have a level of knowledge? People, the older that I get now, I just understand that I always try to understand that the people in my life and the people who do things to me, they're only operating with the tools that they have the best way they know how. You know what I'm saying? And that, again, that's not me excusing inappropriate behavior, but that's just a reality. When people know better, they do better. So obviously this is how this person handles pain, or how this person handles stress, or how this person handles anger. And they're doing the best that they can, obviously, because they think it's the right thing to do. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so that brings us to her situation, right? So we're taking a snap of where she was years ago, and we don't know her thoughts on it now, if she's even the same person she was then, if she was conscious of that, what's going on in the culture. I'm also not excusing, what she did and all those different things, but I'm just saying, if it's okay for your child to make a mistake and then grow, I mean, when do people stop growing?
Yeah, and again, that is the issue that I think that we don't grasp, and we don't understand with adults. We assume because you're grown, you're supposed to know better. And as a society, we punish people as such. You was grown. Unless you've taken a battery of tests and they've sat on somebody's couch like yours. If that ain't happened, you knew better. And how many people do I know, or how many people do we know that they function in the world with the tools that they have, and they just like, I think that, and this is a whole nother conversation for another day again. I just think that sometimes people have incompatible tools. Like you learn to do things that help you survive in one environment, and when you shift environments, they don't work. But again, we're getting off the beaten path. I don't want to get off, because again, you know how we do.
Right.
We could talk forever about
Yeah.
this. The thing is, something that we do understand is that I'm not the same. I wasn't the same person at 35 that I was at 30. I wasn't the same person at 30 that I was at 25. I wasn't the same person at 25 that I was at 18. It's one of the reasons that we all understand relationships don't work. People grow, they change, and they evolve. But we don't look at it the same way when it comes to morality for some reason or another. I think that we think that what is right and what is wrong, like, is universal. Everybody should have this understanding of what is right and what is wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, but it then begs the question, like, certainly there's got to be something that's like, even if you did in the past, that it doesn't die just because it was 30 years ago. Like, how do we set in that line?
I think that ultimately what determines that is, I think, the level and depth of the pain or humiliation that was dealt out to somebody else. We take into account, who was it that got hurt? Was they defenseless in some way, shape, form, or fashion? Was they defenseless or powerless? I think power and control is the crux of everything.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly believe that. It's just like we talk, like, and this is another show for another time. Black comedians can make fun of white people, but if a white comedian makes fun of a black person, it's a problem. Why? It's an issue of power. It's a social issue of power. So, who got hurt? Where are you in the social ladder? You know what I'm saying? Men have more power than women. If a man does something to a woman, even if it was a long time ago, it's an issue or a problem. If a man or woman does something to a child, no matter if it was years ago, it doesn't matter. It's a problem. Well, why is it a problem? Again, it depends on where you are in the quote-unquote pecking order of power, in what happened, and then exactly, was it a physical violation of some sort?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it brings me to a question, though, like, that I know some people might be wondering. Well, what if what you were doing, you did during a time when it was socially acceptable? Like, it still has some consequences. It still hurts people, but at that time, society was cool with it.
See, that's the thing. As I go through what's happening with Dr. Cosby, and again, that's not excusing anything, but it's just kind of like, there's a whole lot of stuff was socially acceptable, like taking Quaaludes and giving people Quaaludes and all that kind of, people was doing all kind of wild and crazy stuff that people just sort of accepted then. You know what I'm saying? And as we've evolved in our thinking, as we've evolved in the way we understand the world and in our thinking, the question is now, do you go back and judge old behaviors with new rules?
Oh, well, there you go.
That's the question is, and as of now, I mean, obviously that's what we're doing, or he wouldn't be in jail. So,
right. Well, and then also, do you go back and judge these old things with new rules, and then do you look at where they're at now? Does that count? Like, if it's, I don't want to say Cosby. I'm not even gonna get into the Cosby thing.
That's just horrible. Like he, and to me, he's at the extreme. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
he's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it was the thing of what was interesting is that when you hear other stars talk about it, like, everybody knew.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. I think the only thing that's, I guess, more stunning than that is R. Kelly. But we won't go there today.
Whole another show for another day.
Yeah, but this still begs that question. Like, if they did it before and now it's all these years later and it was based on a culture and now they've changed, they're a different person. They've grown and evolved.
Yeah, and the more I think about it now, the more I think that the linchpin in all this is, what physical, psychological, and emotional effect, where was the person from a power structure standpoint
Okay.
when it happened, and what were the ramifications and consequences of the act, physically, mentally, and emotionally for the person? Because just because you changed, I'm still walking around with that trauma.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think if it's something that the trauma we recognize as maybe that's it. The more I think about it, you know what I mean?
The trauma.
And that's let me say this to the audience. It's easy, I think, at least for me, and I think that to some extent Dr. Chapman would agree. A lot of finding truth happens organically. Like when we come in here with ideas and with topics, and we just thinking about things and having a real conversation. So it's easy to listen to this podcast back over and over and over, or listen to the show and say, "Oh, well, you just contradicted yourself." Well, part of it is this conversation is truly happening organically. We don't have any of this written down, and for a lot of people, particularly for us, that's sort of a way and a path to knowledge is just sort of in the moment. That's why, Dr. Chapman, a part of the inception of this show for him, and then bringing me along as well, was the idea and notion that the way with which we can have conversations and connect dots in the moment to try to find some truth, or at least to try to find a path to finding truth. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to say that as we move forward, you'll hear us kind of bounce back and forth and refine things, go over things and refine things over and over and over, just in the process of trying to find whatever truth or whatever gems or whatever truth may be buried underneath whatever we're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we've invited you into our minds, into our man cave.
Yeah, definitely. Even though you've changed, the person's trauma endures for a lifetime. So I think that as a society, we try to say, is this something, whatever happened, is this something that could have altered somebody's life forever? Does that trauma that they endured, does that trauma that they went through, does it endure? So just because you've changed, that trauma's there. Yep. I think that is where we start to say, okay, even though this was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you got to pay for this because this other person has been paying this price for the last 20 years dealing with whatever you did. I think that's...
Some people might not even notice that. You know, something that my dad had said to me one time, and I'm going to paraphrase just in case he's listening. It's not exactly what he said. But we were talking about life, and he was just saying that, you could think about all the great things you've done for people, but he was having a moment where he's wondering, well, has there ever been something that's come up where maybe you have inadvertently slighted someone and don't even know it? Like, you have sometimes people come to you like, oh, hey, Dr. Ken, you really changed my life. You did this, But you might also have people holding these things that you don't even know about.
Yeah.
And that could be something that comes up 30 years later. That might not be as dramatic as these other allegations, but even if it doesn't come up, it's in that person's life.
Yeah.
It's affecting them.
For me, and this is my philosophy, we hear the phrase, it's not about intention, it's about impact. It doesn't matter whether you intended to do it. What matters is the impact that things have on people's lives. And to an extent, I get that. If I'm driving down the street and I'm texting and I run over somebody, I didn't intend to hit them, but that has impacted their lives forever. I get that in that situation. I think intention matters. Me personally, I think intention matters.